The call came during a board meeting. My phone vibrated against the conference table, drawing irritated glances from my colleagues. I normally silence it completely, but something made me keep it on vibrate that day. Maybe some part of me knew. I excused myself, heels clicking against marble as I stepped into the hallway. The caller ID showed Detective Morrison. My stomach dropped before I even answered. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Detective Morrison with the Metro Police Department." I leaned against the wall, my free hand pressed flat against the cool surface. "Yes?" "I'm sorry to inform you that your husband Eric has been in an accident." The word accident hung in the air like smoke. I'd later learn how carefully chosen that word was, how much it concealed. "Is he—" I couldn't finish the sentence. "Mrs. Thompson, I need you to come down to Memorial Hospital. There are some questions we need to ask. I'm Penny, and that call shattered my carefully constructed world into jagged pieces that would never quite fit back together. The drive to the hospital exists in my memory as disconnected fragments, red lights bleeding into each other, the radio playing something upbeat and meaningless. My hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The emergency room reeked of disinfectant and despair. Detective Morrison met me at the entrance, a tall woman with tired eyes and a notebook that seemed to hold secrets she didn't want to share. "Your husband's car went off Highway 16 around noon," she said, leading me down a fluorescent-lit corridor. "The initial investigation suggests mechanical failure, but—" "But what?" She stopped walking. "The brake lines were cut, Mrs. Thompson." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Cut? You mean—" "We're treating this as a potential homicide." I remember laughing then, a harsh, broken sound that made a nearby nurse glance over in concern. "That's impossible. Eric was, just a businessman. Who would want to—" The detective's expression shifted slightly. "Mrs. Thompson, we've found some concerning documentation in your husband's car. Financial records, threatening emails. Does the name Marcus Blackwood mean anything to you?" I shook my head, but something clicked into place. All those late-night phone calls Eric had been taking lately, the way he'd been distracted and jumpy. "I need to see him," I said. "Mrs. Thompson." Her hesitation told me everything. "Please." She led me to a room where Eric lay covered by a sheet. I didn't cry, not then. Instead, I noticed absurd details. His wedding ring catching the harsh hospital lights, a small cut above his left eyebrow that looked fresh, as if it might still be bleeding. "We'll need you to make a formal identification," Detective Morrison said softly. I nodded, but my mind was already racing ahead. Eric's mother Maggie would need to be told, and Cassie, his sister. My father would want to come over, despite his wheelchair making it difficult. But beneath all these practical thoughts, something darker was taking root. Someone had killed my husband. Someone had deliberately sent him off that road to his death. And in that sterile hospital room, standing over the body of the man I loved, I made a promise. I would find out who did this, and they would pay. My phone buzzed again. Maggie's name flashed on the screen. Of course she'd heard already. She always knew everything first. I let it ring, watching until the screen went dark. Some decisions change everything. Standing there, I chose not to answer that call, and that choice would set in motion events I couldn't possibly have predicted. Because sometimes the people closest to you are the ones holding the sharpest knives. Maggie's house loomed before me, all polished brick and manicured hedges. I sat in my car, watching shadows move behind the curtains. 3 missed calls from her already today. The 4th one would be in person. The front door opened before I could knock. Maggie stood there in a black designer dress, her face a masterpiece of controlled grief. "Finally," she said, pulling me inside. "I've been trying to reach you for hours. Where have you been?" The foyer smelled of lilies, Eric's favorite. Of course she'd already ordered flowers. "I was at the hospital, Maggie. Then the police station." "The police?" Her perfectly manicured hand flew to her throat. "What are they saying about my boy?" I studied her face, searching for something genuine beneath the performance. They're saying it wasn't an accident. Cassie appeared at the top of the stairs, mascara smeared beneath her eyes. For once, her expensive clothes looked rumpled, lived in. What do you mean, not an accident? The brake lines were cut, I said, watching both their faces. Maggie's hand tightened on the banister. Cassie's eyes widened. That's ridiculous, Maggie snapped. Who would want to hurt Eric? He was beloved in the community. Unless... She turned to me, eyes narrowing. What have you done to protect my son's interest lately, Penny? All those late nights at the office. Were you even paying attention to what was happening? Don't you dare, I said, my voice low. Don't you dare try to blame this on me. Mother, Cassie interrupted, descending the stairs. This isn't helping. No, Maggie's voice rose. Then what would help, Cassandra? Because my son is dead, and someone needs to answer for that. She turned back to me. We need access to the business accounts. Everything. Eric always said it was a family business. Eric said a lot of things, I replied, but legally, I'm his next of kin. And until we know what happened, everything stays locked down. You can't do that. Maggie stepped closer, her carefully constructed facade cracking. That business was built with Thompson money. Our money. You're just an outsider who Eric chose to marry, I cut in, who he trusted with everything. Did he? Cassie asked quietly. Something in her tone made me turn. She was holding her phone, screen glowing in the dimness of the foyer. Because I have some interesting emails here that suggest otherwise. My stomach clenched. What emails? Eric was planning changes, Cassie said, glancing at her mother. Big ones. Maybe that's why someone wanted him dead. Show me, I demanded. All in good time, Maggie interrupted. Right now, we need to focus on arrangements. The funeral needs to be perfect. Eric deserves that much. The police haven't released his body yet, I said. They're still investigating. Investigating what? Cassie's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. What exactly did Eric tell you about his business dealings, Penny? The question hung in the air like smoke. I thought about the detective's words. Marcus Blackwood. The name I didn't recognize, but they clearly did, judging by the look that passed between mother and daughter. I think, I said carefully, that we all need to be very honest about what we know. Honest? Maggie laughed, a brittle sound. My dear, you wouldn't know what to do with honesty if it slapped you in the face. Now, about those accounts. No. I moved toward the door. You'll hear from my lawyer. Penny, Cassie called after me. The emails, you should really see them. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Send them to me. Outside, the evening air felt thick with unspoken threats. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassie. There's more to this than you know. Meet me tomorrow, alone. I got in my car, watching the house in my rearview mirror. Maggie stood at the window, her silhouette rigid with fury. Beside her, Cassie raised her phone to her ear, speaking urgently to someone. The game had begun, and I was already several moves behind. But as I drove away, one thing became crystal clear. Someone in that house knew exactly why Eric died, and I was going to find out who. The emails arrived at 3 a.m. My hands shook as I scrolled through them, Eric's words glowing accusingly in the darkness of our bedroom, our former bedroom. The deal with Blackwood is worse than we thought. If Mother finds out what we've done, I kept reading, each message revealing more layers of deception. Eric and Cassie had been working together, planning something big, something that terrified them both. My father's voice crackled through the phone. Penny, it's nearly dawn. You should sleep. Dad, I need your help understanding these financials. I switched to speaker, spreading papers across the bed. Eric was moving money around, lots of it, but the numbers don't add up. You're good with numbers, he said. Better than Eric ever was. That's just it. I stared at a particularly suspicious transfer. These aren't amateur mistakes. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. A knock at the door made me freeze. Through the peephole, I saw Cassie, mascara-stained and trembling. I couldn't sleep, she said when I opened the door. And there's something you need to see. She pulled out a USB drive. turning it over in her manicured hands. Eric gave me this the day before the accident. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got it. Why didn't you mention this at the house? Mother was watching. Cassie's voice cracked. She's always watching. Penny? My father's voice came through the phone. Who's there? It's Cassie, I said, studying her face. Dad, I'll call you back. I plugged in the drive. Cassie paced behind me, her designer heels clicking against the hardwood. Files populated the screen. Contracts, emails, photos. One folder was simply labeled MB. Marcus Blackwood, Cassie whispered. Mother's old friend, the one who helped start the company. The photos showed Eric and Blackwood in heated discussion outside a restaurant. The timestamp was 3 days before the accident. Eric was going to expose him, Cassie said. The whole operation. But Mother... A car door slammed outside. Cassie rushed to the window, pulling back the curtain. She's here. God, she followed me. Maggie Thompson strode up the walkway, her face set in lines of fury. I grabbed the USB drive, but Cassie caught my wrist. Wait, she hissed. There's something else you need to know. About the brake lines. The doorbell rang, its chime cutting through the tension like a knife. Cassie went rigid, her fingers digging into my arm. Don't, she whispered. Please, she'll... The doorbell rang again, followed by pounding. Cassandra, Maggie's voice carried through the door. I know you're in there, both of you. I moved toward the door, but Cassie blocked my path. You don't understand. The company, the money, it's all built on lies. Eric found proof. Found proof of what? Tears streaked her makeup. That Mother killed. The sound of a key in the lock silenced us both. I spun around as the door swung open, revealing Maggie with a spare key, Eric's key, in her hand. Well, she said, her smile sharp as broken glass. Isn't this cozy? A little late-night conspiracy? How dare you use his key, I said, my voice shaking with rage. Oh, darling. Maggie stepped inside, her heels clicking like bullets on the floor. Everything that was Eric's is family property now, including whatever my daughter just gave you. She held out her hand expectantly. Behind her, through the open door, I saw a man standing by a black car. Even in the darkness, I recognized him from the photos, Marcus Blackwood. Cassie saw him too. She made a small, frightened sound. The drive, Maggie demanded. Now. I clutched it tighter, feeling the edges dig into my palm. In that moment, I understood something terrible. This wasn't just about Eric's death anymore. This was about something much older, something buried deep in the Thompson family's past. And Maggie would do anything to keep it there. I slipped the USB drive into my boot while backing away from Maggie. Get out of my house. Your house? She laughed, a sound like breaking ice. Everything here belongs to the Thompson family, including whatever secrets you think you've discovered. Blackwood appeared in the doorway, his presence filling the room with something cold and calculating. Margaret, perhaps we should discuss this privately. There's nothing to discuss, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Eric left everything to me. The house, the business. The business? Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. My dear, you have no idea what you're involved in. Cassie moved between us, her hands trembling. Marcus, please. This isn't what Eric would have wanted. Eric, he said softly, made several unfortunate decisions near the end, decisions that needed correction. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. I reached for my phone, but Maggie was faster. Looking for this? She held up my cell phone. You really should be more careful about leaving things lying around. A text message flashed on the screen. From Detective Morrison. My stomach lurched as Maggie read it aloud. Found something in Eric's office. Meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. How interesting. She pocketed my phone. It seems we're not the only ones asking questions. Mother, Cassie whispered, don't do this. Do what, darling? Protect our family? Maggie's voice hardened. Like I protected you after that incident with the Martinez contract. Cassie went pale. You promised never to. Promises, I cut in. Like the promise Eric made about the Blackwood deal. Something shifted in Blackwood's expression. What exactly did Eric tell you? Enough. I moved toward the kitchen, where I kept a second phone hidden in a drawer. Enough to know why he was meeting with federal investigators the week before he died. Maggie's composure cracked. You're lying. Am I? Check the USB drive. I watched their faces carefully. Oh, wait, you can't. Because I already sent copies to my lawyer. It was a bluff, but it hit home. Blackwood grabbed Maggie's arm, whispering something urgent in her ear. Penny, Cassie said suddenly, the painting in Eric's office. Did you ever look behind it? Maggie slapped her. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. That's enough, I snapped, but Cassie was already laughing, a high, hysterical sound. You can't keep it hidden forever, she said, touching her reddened cheek. Eric found the real ledgers. He knew what you did to Dad. The room went silent. Maggie's face drained of color. What about your father? I asked carefully. Nothing, Maggie cut in. Cassandra is confused. Marcus, perhaps you should take her home. I'm not confused, Cassie said, her voice stronger now. Tell her, Mother. Tell her how Dad really died. Blackwood moved suddenly, but I was already running for the kitchen. I heard glass breaking, Cassie screaming, Maggie shouting orders. My fingers found the spare phone just as heavy footsteps approached. I texted Detective Morrison. Thompson House, now, murder confession incoming. The kitchen door burst open. Blackwood stood there, his expensive suit incongruous with the violence in his eyes. The ledgers, he said quietly. Where are they? Where you'll never find them. Another bluff, but I was starting to piece it together. Eric's father's accident years ago, the company's sudden success afterward, Eric's desperate investigation in his final days. From the other room, I heard Cassie's voice, raw with years of buried truth. She killed him, Penny. She killed them both. Blackwood lunged forward just as police sirens wailed in the distance. In the chaos that followed, one thought crystallized with terrible clarity. Eric hadn't just been investigating fraud. He'd been unraveling a decades-old murder, and it had cost him everything. Now I had to finish what he started, or I'd be next. Detective Morrison's office felt like a cage. I paced while she reviewed the USB files, each click of her mouse marking another second we were exposed. Mrs. Thompson, she said finally, these records go back 20 years. Are you certain about Marcus Blackwood's involvement? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Liam. Third call today. I sent it to voicemail. Eric's father didn't die in an accident, I said. According to those files, Maggie and Blackwood orchestrated it. The company was failing, but the insurance payout saved it. And you believe they did the same to your husband? The door opened. Another detective entered, whispering something in Morrison's ear. Her expression darkened. Your father-in-law's case was ruled an accident, she said carefully. Reopening it would require substantial evidence. A familiar voice cut through the room. Liam stood in the doorway, holding a thick manila envelope. Like these? Morrison frowned. This is a closed meeting, Mr. Carter. I'm Mrs. Thompson's attorney now. He placed the envelope on the desk. And these are the original ledgers from the Thompson Company, the ones Eric found behind that painting. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. How did you... Eric contacted me the day before he died, Liam said quietly. He knew they were watching him. Asked me to keep these safe. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. You knew, all this time. Penny, don't. I backed away from both of them. You let me stumble around in the dark while you had proof. I was trying to protect you. Liam reached for my arm. If Blackwood knew you had these, like he knew Eric had them. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Did you tell them? Is that why they were ready for him that day? Morrison stood. Mrs. Thompson, if you're suggesting... My phone buzzed again. Cassie's text made my blood freeze. Mother knows about the ledgers. Dad's old cabin. Come alone or they'll hurt Robert. I have to go, I said, grabbing my purse. Penny, wait. Liam blocked the door. You can't trust Cassie, she's been working with them. How would you know that? I studied his face, seeing it clearly for the first time. Unless... He didn't deny it. Everything I did was to keep you safe. Safe? I laughed, the sound brittle and strange. My husband is dead, my father's being held hostage, and you've been playing both sides this whole time. Morrison moved toward her phone. I'm calling for backup. No. I pulled out my gun. Eric's gun, found in his office safe. No one calls anyone. Liam's eyes widened. Put that down. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking perfectly clearly. I backed toward the door. For the first time, I understand exactly what needs to be done. Penny, please. The ledgers stay here, I told Morrison. Evidence for both murders. But I'm going to that cabin. It's a trap, Liam said softly. Of course it is. I kept the gun steady. But unlike you, I don't abandon family. I left them there, Morrison reaching for her radio, Liam calling my name. The drive to the cabin stretched before me, dark and winding, like the path that had led to this moment. Eric had died trying to expose the truth. Now his mother was threatening my father, using him as bait, and Liam, the one person I thought I could trust, had been manipulating everything from the start. The gun felt heavy in my purse. I'd never fired one before, but as I drove toward the mountains, I realized something that should have terrified me, but instead brought a strange calm. I was ready to use it, because sometimes justice and revenge are the same thing. The cabin loomed ahead, a dark shape against the mountain sky. Dad's wheelchair tracks marked the gravel. They'd dragged him inside. My hands tightened on Eric's gun as I approached. Cassie opened the door before I knocked. You shouldn't have come. Where is he? She stepped aside, revealing the cabin's interior. Dad sat in his wheelchair by the fireplace, Maggie standing behind him. Blackwood lounged in an armchair, looking almost bored. Penny, Dad said, his voice steady despite the bruise darkening his cheek. You need to leave. No one's leaving, Maggie announced. Not until we sort this out like family. Family? I kept the gun hidden behind my purse. Is that what you call murdering your husband? Your son? Blackwood straightened. Careful, Mrs. Thompson. Accusations like that can be dangerous. Eric knew, I said, about the insurance fraud, the offshore accounts, everything. Eric was naive, Maggie snapped, just like his father, always wanting to do the right thing, never understanding what it takes to build something lasting. Movement caught my eye, Cassie inching toward a desk drawer. Don't, I warned, finally revealing the gun. Maggie laughed. Do you even know how to use that? Want to find out? Penny, Dad's voice carried a warning. This isn't you. No? I stepped closer to Maggie. Maybe it is now. Maybe this is what happens when you kill someone's husband and threaten their father. I didn't kill Eric, Maggie said softly, but I know who did. The cabin door creaked. Footsteps behind me. Hello, Penny. Liam's voice hit me like a physical blow. I spun, keeping the gun raised, but he already had his weapon trained on me. You followed me. I've been following you since Eric died, he said, making sure you didn't get too close to the truth. The truth? My laugh sounded hysterical even to my own ears. That you're working with them? Working with them? Liam shook his head. Penny, I own them. Who do you think Marcus Blackwood really works for? The room tilted. Memories flashed. Liam's convenient appearances, his careful guidance of my investigation, always steering me toward Maggie and away from... The rival business, I whispered. It was you all along. Eric found out, Cassie said quietly. That's why he contacted the FBI, but Liam got to him first. Shut up, Maggie hissed. No, Mother, I'm done lying. Cassie moved toward me. Eric was trying to protect us all, from him. Liam's smile turned cruel. And now history repeats itself, another Thompson making the same mistake. The ledgers, I said. Detective Morrison has them. Detective Morrison works for me. He stepped closer. Everything works for me, Penny. That's what Eric never understood. That's what got him killed. Dad's wheelchair squeaked as he tried to move. Blackwood pressed him back. You loved me, I said, gun shaking. All those years pretending to be my friend. I did love you, still do. Liam's expression softened. That's why I'm giving you a choice. Put down the gun, sign over the company, walk away with your father, and live. Or join Eric. His weapon didn't waver. Your choice. Time seemed to freeze. Dad's eyes met mine, filled with a lifetime of lessons about right and wrong. Cassie stood trembling, her loyalty finally clear, but too late. Maggie watched with the desperate look of someone seeing their carefully built world crumble. And Liam, the man I'd trusted, who'd held me while I cried over Eric's death, waited for my surrender. I lowered the gun slowly. Smart girl, he said. Then everything happened at once. Dad threw himself forward, wheelchair crashing into Blackwood. Cassie screamed. A shot rang out, and I realized that sometimes the only way to end a nightmare is to wake up shooting. The gunshot echoed through the cabin. Liam staggered back, red blooming across his shoulder. My aim wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Dad's wheelchair had knocked Blackwood off balance, giving me the split second I needed. You stupid girl, Liam snarled, raising his weapon again. Cassie tackled him from behind. They crashed into the desk, sending papers flying. His gun skittered across the floor. The FBI is already coming, I said, keeping my weapon trained on him. The real FBI, not your corrupt agents. Liam laughed through gritted teeth. You're bluffing. Eric wasn't just gathering evidence against you. I moved closer, finger steady on the trigger. He was building a network, people ready to act if anything happened to him. Penny, Maggie's voice shook, he'll kill us all, like you killed your husband. I didn't take my eyes off Liam. Or did you just watch while he did it? Mother didn't know, Cassie said, backing away from Liam. Not about Dad. Not about Eric. Liam threatened to expose her fraud if she didn't help him take over the company. Blackwood lunged for Liam's fallen gun. Dad's cane cracked across his wrist. Stay down, Dad ordered, his teacher's voice cutting through the chaos. Both of you. Sirens wailed in the distance. Liam's face twisted into something inhuman. You have no idea what you've done, he spat. The people I work for will abandon you, I finished, just like you abandoned Eric when he begged for his life. His eyes widened. How did you... The cabin has security cameras. I nodded toward the corner. Eric installed them after someone broke in last year. They've been recording everything. Including your confession, Cassie added. Liam moved faster than I thought possible, producing a hidden blade. He grabbed Maggie, pressing steel against her throat. One last choice, Penny, he said. Let me walk out of here, or watch your mother-in-law die. Maggie trembled in his grip. Despite everything, despite her own crimes, I saw real fear in her eyes. Eric always said you were smart, Liam continued. Be smart now. Lower the gun. I did. Good girl. He backed toward the door, dragging Maggie with him. Maybe I did love you in my way. I loved you too, I said softly. That's why I'm sorry about this. The taser hit him from behind. Detective Morrison stood in the doorway, weapon raised. Federal agents, she shouted as her team swarmed in. Everyone on the ground. Liam collapsed, taking Maggie down with him. Blackwood tried to run, but didn't make it 2 steps. You okay? Morrison asked me later, as paramedics checked Dad's injuries. I watched them lead Liam away in handcuffs. He didn't look back. Eric knew, I said. He knew Liam would come after me next. That's why he left all those breadcrumbs, hoping I'd follow them to the truth. And the security footage. Uploading to the FBI server as we speak. I turned to where Cassie sat with Maggie. They helped in the end. When it mattered, they'll still face charges for their role in the fraud. Good. I felt nothing but exhaustion now. Justice should be blind, right? Morrison smiled slightly. Your husband would be proud. I thought of Eric, of his determination to expose the truth no matter the cost. of his faith that I would finish what he started. "The company," I said. "What happens to it now?" "That's up to you." She handed me a card. "When you're ready, we'll talk about rebuilding. The right way this time." Dawn was breaking as we left the cabin. Maggie and Cassie were led to separate cars, their futures uncertain, but their secrets finally exposed. Dad waited in the ambulance, strong despite everything. And somewhere, I hoped, Eric could rest, knowing his death hadn't been in vain. The gun felt heavy in the evidence bag. I'd never have to use it again, but its weight would stay with me. A reminder that sometimes justice requires more than just truth. It requires courage to pull the trigger. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should in summer. I watched Liam being led away in chains, his expensive suit replaced by prison orange. He didn't look back this time either. 10 to 20 years, Morrison said, joining me. Plus, whatever they add for Eric's murder once the forensics come back. I nodded, thinking of the security footage that sealed his fate. And Maggie? 5 years, reduced for cooperation. Cassie gets probation. Morrison studied my face. You okay with that? Eric would be. I turned away from Liam's retreating figure. He always said Cassie was just trying to survive their mother. Inside the building, Dad waited with the company paperwork. The restructuring had been his idea, turning the Thompson business into a foundation for supporting whistleblowers and fraud victims. "Ready?" he asked as I approached. "Almost." I walked past him to where Cassie sat alone on a bench, her designer clothes replaced by something simpler, more honest. She looked up as I stopped before her. "I never thanked you for the cabin. You chose the right side in the end." "Did I?" She twisted her hands together. "Sometimes I think if I'd been braver sooner, Eric might still be alive. We all think that." I sat beside her, but Eric left us a way to make it right. I handed her the foundation paperwork. Her eyes widened as she read. "Co-director?" She shook her head. "Penny, I can't." Eric believed in second chances, in rebuilding things the right way. I stood. "Don't prove him wrong." Dad smiled as I rejoined him. "That was good of you. That was justice." I signed the final papers, feeling the weight of the past months lift slightly. Different from revenge, like you always said. The elevator dinged. Maggie emerged between two officers, headed for processing. Our eyes met briefly. She looked smaller somehow, stripped of her manipulations and masks. "I loved him," she said as they led her past. "In my way." "I know." I watched her go. "That's what makes it tragic." Outside again, Morrison handed me one last item. Eric's phone, finally released from evidence. "There's a video," she said quietly, "from the night before he died. You should watch it." Later, in Eric's office, my office now, I pressed play. His face filled the screen, tired but determined. "Penny, if you're seeing this, I failed. But I knew you'd finish it. You're stronger than all of them. Stronger than me." He paused, smiling that crooked smile I missed so much. "The company was never about money. It was about helping people, making things better. I know you'll do that. And Penny? Don't let what they did make you hard. Don't let my death become your prison." The screen went dark. Through the window, I could see the city stretching out, full of possibilities and pitfalls. The Foundation's first meeting was tomorrow. Cassie would be there, bringing her knowledge of the dark side of business. Dad would watch proudly as we built something new from the ashes of betrayal. My phone buzzed. A text from Morrison. They'd found more of Liam's victims, other companies he'd infiltrated and destroyed. The Foundation would help them too. I placed Eric's phone in the desk drawer, next to the gun I'd never fired again after that night. Both reminders, but of different choices. The office door opened. Dad rolled in with takeout bags. "Thought you might be hungry." Always taking care of me. "That's what family does." He set out the food. The real kind, not the kind that demands loyalty through fear. I joined him, thinking of Eric's words. "Don't let my death become your prison." "You know what else family does?" I asked, grabbing a container. They build things together. Outside, the sun set on the Thompson building, its shadow stretching long across the city. Tomorrow, those shadows would begin to shrink, making way for something brighter, something better, just like Eric always wanted.
My hubby got our wedding dress, made for $1 million, but now my mother wants me to sell it and give the money to my sister to cover up her sin. On my refusal, so they threatened to show some of my videos to my in-laws on the wedding day. I'm Layla, 27 years old. Mason and I are engaged. Unfortunately, both my parents have passed away. We recently visited their graves together. She recounted how her father had died when she was young and her mother, who raised her alone, passed away last year due to a sudden illness. Now, without any family, she had found solace and support in Mason's steadfast presence. Layla spoke of her mother's last days. Before she passed, my mom began to give away her possessions, afraid that I'd be burdened by the past. She only kept her wedding dress, the one she wore when she married my dad. They loved each other deeply, and I think she couldn't part with that memory. Layla cherished this dress and hoped to wear it at her own wedding to honor their legacy of love. For years after that conversation, as Layla and Mason prepared to start their family, that same wedding dress remained carefully preserved. Attempting to lighten the mood in response to the subtle digs about her clothing from her mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Layla explained, "These clothes are just more comfortable and practical for me." She decided not to escalate the situation. After all, her choice of attire was merely simpler than theirs, not a significant issue. However, she couldn't hide her surprise. She had deliberated extensively over her outfit, aiming to bridge the gap between her modest background and Mason's affluent family life. "Is this typical for commoners?" her mother-in-law had asked curiously. "Perhaps it is. Why don't you feel it?" For the memories, Layla chose to respond with grace, hoping to turn this awkward first impression into a lasting positive memory with her future family. The atmosphere was both tense and awkward as they laughed at my clothes once more, making it quite clear they found my appearance amusing. It was challenging facing them by myself, especially with Mason held up by unexpected work commitments. As the conversation drifted towards our upcoming wedding, their true colors showed. "They think she's marrying Mason for his money, since she has no family," one of them remarked, as if I wasn't there. The audacity of their accusation struck me. They assumed my intentions were purely for financial gain, reflecting a narrow-minded view of a world divided by status. Despite the sting of their words, I found myself growing weary. The relentless criticisms wore me down, and I began doubting my worthiness of Mason. My confidence waned, and I fell silent, gazing downward in defeat. Just then, Mason arrived, his timing impeccable. "Sorry I'm late," he apologized. His presence instantly lifted my spirits. As Mason took in the scene, his family explained their condescending views to him, stressing the difference in our social standings. But Mason was quick to counter, "Status doesn't matter. I love Layla and want to spend my life with her. Let's not sour this special time with petty comments." With that, he suggested we leave for our wedding planning meeting, signaling an end to the uncomfortable encounter. His words seemed to take his mother and sister-in-law by surprise, leaving them momentarily speechless. However, they soon regained their composure and, with a hint of embarrassment, accepted the situation. "We were wrong. Please proceed with your plans and forgive our earlier behavior," his mother said, her voice trembling slightly. From there, the atmosphere shifted. They expressed their support and even extended a warm invitation to collaborate on the wedding preparations. "Choose any dress from our preferred shop," his sister-in-law suggested cheerfully. Mason intervened. "Actually, Layla has decided to wear her mother's heirloom dress. It's something very special to us both." "That's wonderful," they exclaimed, a complete turnaround from their initial skepticism. They even offered to store the dress safely, presenting it as a wedding gift. I appreciated their change of heart, though their sudden shift was somewhat disconcerting. Nevertheless, peace was welcome, and I thanked them, looking forward to moving past the earlier tensions. The journey to our wedding day was back on track, marked by newfound respect and understanding. At the wedding, it was crucial that everything be perfect, so storing the dress properly was a priority. Enthusiastically, Mason's family offered to keep the gown on a mannequin in a spare room. Given their insistence, I agreed. The room was quickly transformed into a charming display area where the dress was showcased on the mannequin, creating an unusual yet attractive setup. Initially, I was apprehensive, but it was comforting to see Mason's family rallying to support our upcoming marriage as other preparations went smoothly. The day before the wedding, when it was time to move the dress to the venue, Mason and I noticed a faint smell of smoke as we approached the room. Inside, the scent grew stronger, a troubling sign. When we opened the door, we were met with a shocking scene. My mother's dress, along with the mannequin, was engulfed in flames. Stunned, I froze, unable to move. Reacting swiftly, Mason grabbed a fire extinguisher and tackled the blaze spreading beyond the dress. It was my first time witnessing a fire extinguisher in action. Overwhelmed, I broke down in tears, watching the fabric of my mother's gown burn away as Mason fought to extinguish it. The moment felt surreal, and I felt utterly powerless, my tears flowing freely. Once the fire was out, Mason returned to comfort me. The dress was irreparably damaged, leaving me speechless and shocked. Just then, a voice chimed in from behind. It was my mother-in-law. Her words were harsh and hurtful, commenting on the state of the dress and deeming it unworthy of their family's wedding, calling it a divine retribution. Shocked by her cruelty, I couldn't hold back my dismay. How could you? I confronted her, unable to forgive such spiteful behavior. She continued to justify the incident as a fortunate event, preventing what she considered a disgrace to their family legacy. She even suggested canceling the wedding, offering to pay the cancellation fees. But I stood firm, wiping away my tears, determined not to let this break me. No, we will not cancel, I declared. I was resolute in my decision to marry Mason, believing in the strength of our love and the future we would build together, much like my parents. Dismissively, my mother-in-law noted she was looking forward to the wedding as she left the room, her tone undercutting the sincerity of her words. Despite the turmoil, I held on to the belief that tomorrow's ceremony would mark the beginning of a wonderful journey for Mason and me, filled with love and unity, transcending the challenges we faced. I felt a surge of guilt toward my mom as tears flooded my eyes. Beside me, Mason provided unwavering support, his presence a comfort as I gradually composed myself. However, my sadness soon gave way to anger. We had hoped for nothing more than a simple, happy marriage, yet found ourselves mistreated and maligned for no reason. Despite my mother-in-law's feigned ignorance, I couldn't bring myself to believe her. As the wedding day approached, I was torn about whether to choose an alternative gown since no other dress had captivated me like my original choice. Ultimately, the day arrived with Mason, the son of a well-known corporate magnate, ensuring a ceremony teeming with media coverage. Initially reluctant, I embraced the situation, realizing it symbolized my future with Mason. The venue was lavishly decorated, exceeding my expectations and feeling oddly impersonal. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, clad in ostentatious attire, mingled among the guests, basking in compliments while subtly disparaging me as too plain and ordinary. Despite their antics, portraying themselves as the stars of the show, I stood back, resolved to maintain my composure. As the ceremony began, I chose to walk down the aisle with Mason. I could have walked alone, but I wanted to begin this new chapter together with him. As we walked, I reflected on my life's journey and the new future unfolding with him. Our entrance, typically a silent affair, was warmed by whispers of "beautiful" from the guests. Suddenly, laughter erupted. It was my mother-in-law and sister-in-law mocking my attire and calling it a burnt crisp crow dress, suggesting it looked charred. I held my peace, choosing to ignore their cruel jibes and focus on the path ahead. The ceremony's tone shifted when my father-in-law intervened, admonishing the three for their disrespect not just towards me, but also towards Mason and all the guests. They fell silent, their faces etched with regret. The venue quieted, and the ceremony continued with dignity, the elegance of the dark brown dress I wore standing in stark contrast to the petty comments that had tried to mar our special day. After facing the heartbreak of not being able to wear my mother's original wedding dress due to an unexpected disaster, I made a bold choice. Opting for a dark brown dress, I aimed to make a statement of resilience and love at my wedding with Mason. This dress symbolized not just my affection for Mason, but also a desire to forge a relationship even stronger than that of my parents. Mason, knowing the sentimental value of my mother's dress, initially struggled with the idea of finding another white dress. However, understanding the profound significance behind my choice of the dark brown dress, he supported my decision wholeheartedly. During the wedding ceremony, the emotional weight of the moment was palpable, but it was during the reception that the true depth of the situation unfolded. As the guests settled in, a video began to play. Instead of the expected heartwarming clips of our childhood or how we met, it showed a distressing scene. The room where my mother's dress was kept, now with the dress completely consumed by flames. The footage captured a figure deliberately setting the fire and then retreating from the camera. This shocking revelation turned all eyes towards my sister-in-law, who stood out uncomfortably in the crowd. Inwardly, I noted her newfound, albeit unwelcome, spotlight. Amidst the murmurs and disbelief, I maintained control over the video playback. As the dress was nearly destroyed, Mason and I appeared on the screen, him extinguishing the fire, a dramatic twist revealing our proactive stance against the sabotage. The video, which had been secretly recorded by Mason using a hidden camera, captured clear images of the culprit hurling insults at us. This wasn't just a random recording. It was strategic, intended to expose the truth during our reception, where it could not be ignored or dismissed. My fears of the video being tampered with or discredited were allayed by presenting it in such a public and undeniable manner. Accusations flew as the responsible parties claimed the video was fabricated, but their protests fell on deaf ears. The presence of off-duty police officers at the reception, there due to the high-profile nature of our wedding, enabled immediate official scrutiny. The video, verified as unaltered, left little room for doubt. My sister-in-law faced serious charges for her actions, potentially leading to imprisonment. Despite her protests and attempts to dismiss the evidence as falsified due to personal vendettas, the clarity of the video spoke for itself. In that moment, the strength I drew from the dark brown dress I wore was affirmed, not just as a symbol of love, but as a beacon of truth and justice in the face of deceit and malice. She protested strongly, claiming to be the victim, unaware that setting her own property on fire was still illegal. It became evident that her obsession with money overshadowed her understanding of basic societal norms. During a dramatic confrontation, her mother-in-law shockingly accused her of acting alone, leading her father-in-law to publicly disown her and announce their impending divorce. He had grown weary of her antics, and this incident was the final straw, convincing him that she was incapable of adopting proper values. As a result, the mother-in-law and sister-in-law were excluded from the family, no longer having any ties to me. Meanwhile, as Mason prepared to take over as company president, I supported him as we built our life together. Contrary to my initial expectations of a company president being arrogant, my father-in-law proved otherwise. He was receptive to feedback from Mason and me, using it to enhance the company's growth. I was excited about our future collaboration. After the sister-in-law was imprisoned, she and her mother began posting videos slandering me, claiming I was after their wealth. They urged viewers to help them reclaim their home. However, their pleas were ignored as a live video from the ceremony had shown them mocking the bride, leading their videos to attract only dislikes and no support. With each video, their financial decline became more apparent, evidenced by their increasingly cheaper clothing. They might have hoped to profit from their videos, but that endeavor also failed. It remains unclear how they managed to sustain themselves with their challenging personalities and criminal records. In contrast, Mason and I are flourishing, truly becoming a family. Looking at our wedding photos, we share laughter and joy. I cherish my life with Mason, feeling as though my parents are smiling down on us from heaven. I wouldn't change a thing. Losing financial support was the tipping point. They likely felt they could do this because I'd been holding everything together, working multiple jobs and raising 4 children solo. Then my sister Chloe and my mother ganged up on me. "This is what you get for not educating yourself," they taunted. "Don't ever come back here," they sneered, exchanging looks as they chuckled. Turning around, I saw my daughters were close to tears. I couldn't stand it any longer. "Fine, but you'll regret this," I declared. They looked at each other, briefly surprised, before smirking dismissively. "Do what you want. It makes no difference to us whether you're here or not," they said. "By the way, I'm remarrying someone very successful," I added. At that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief. I gathered my daughters, and we went inside to prepare for an early departure. "You've all been so strong these past 3 months," I reassured them as we packed our things into my car. The next day, Chloe bombarded me with calls, but I felt no duty to answer. Her frantic messages indicated panic, but inwardly, I was confident in our decision. "My name is Layla, and I just turned 33. I juggle several part-time jobs to provide for my family as a single mother. I met my ex-husband at work when I was 27. We were colleagues, then partners, and married a year later. My children are my world. My eldest daughter is 8, followed by a 7-year-old, a 1-year-old son, and the youngest, a 1-year-old boy. Our divorce came after discovering his affair during my last pregnancy. One day, I returned home early from work to find my daughters upset outside. My 1-year-old was with me, and it was alarming to see my other children kept out of the house. Inside, my ex had invited his new girlfriend over and told the girls to stay outside. It was winter, and they were supposed to come home by 6:10 p.m. as instructed by their school, but they found themselves displaced and confused at the door. The betrayal was too much, and furious at his disregard for our family, I demanded a separation. After finalizing the divorce, he promptly signed the papers without any resistance, but refused to provide alimony or child support. He absconded with his partner, and since the house was inherited by him, I had no choice but to vacate with our children and settle into an apartment. This upheaval significantly impacted my health and eventually led to the loss of my job. Previously, I had resigned from my position upon our marriage, and he also left his job, possibly to evade detection. They both ceased all forms of contact, leaving me in a state of despair and anger. Nonetheless, I was determined to provide for my children. To make ends meet, I took up multiple part-time jobs. By day, I worked as a cafe shop and stocked shelves at a drugstore. To supplement my income, I also worked nights occasionally at a friend's bar. During these times, a friend's sister kindly babysat my children for whatever compensation I could afford. After enduring a challenging year, I gave birth to my 4th child, my youngest son. Despite the relentless and exhausting days, I persevered. One day, my routine was interrupted by persistent calls from an unknown number, which I initially dismissed as spam. However, the number's persistence piqued my curiosity, although I found no suspicious activity associated with it online. I continued to disregard the calls until an unexpected encounter at the supermarket with Chloe, a figure from my past. Surprised, I managed to smile and inquired how she found my workplace and obtained my number. With a smug expression, she revealed she had hired a detective because, while she was willing to spend money, she did not want to overspend. Shocked by her sudden interest in reconnecting, I felt uneasy about her intentions, particularly towards my children. Reluctantly, I returned her call after my shift. She proposed a meeting to talk at a nearby diner, seemingly unaware of my current life as a divorced mother. When I explained my responsibilities towards my children, she laughed mockingly, questioning who would choose to marry someone like me. Her derision stung deeply, reopening wounds from my past. Firmly, I told her it was none of her business and instructed her never to contact me again before hanging up and blocking her number. Though the call was brief, it left me emotionally drained. a stark reminder of the struggles I had overcome and the ongoing challenges I faced in freeing myself from the shadows of my past. After sharing some distressing thoughts with my mom, I felt nauseous and quickly headed to pick up my kids. That evening was peaceful, spent solely with my children, as Chloe was nowhere to be seen. However, Chloe was persistent, and about a month following our dispute, I noticed movers next door. To my dismay, it was Chloe and my mom emerging from the moving truck. I hadn't spoken to my mom in years, and her disdainful gaze was all too familiar. She taunted me cruelly, insinuating that I had been kicked out because my husband had cheated on me, and sneered at me, calling me and my kids ugly ducklings destined to never become swans. Despite the chill this sent down my spine, I maintained my calm and inquired why they had moved next door. It turned out my mom had hired a detective because I had blocked their calls, and they were desperate to reach me since she was now in poor health and needed care. The notion that I should take care of a mother who had been indifferent to me all my life was absurd. My anger grew, my hands shaking, as I confronted them about their neglect and hypocrisy. Chloe grabbed my arm, insisting it was my duty to care for our aging mother. I pulled away and locked myself inside my home, shutting them out despite their persistent knocking. Inside, my sons offered comfort, one anxious, the other smiling innocently. I reassured them, and myself, that I would protect them no matter what. When I eventually had to leave for work, a close friend from high school noticed my distress. I confided in her about my mom and sister's intrusion next door and their expectations. She was indignant on my behalf, advising me to ignore them since they had mistreated me for so long. Her support was a small comfort. We had both worked hard in our youth, me juggling jobs to afford school, while she went on to college and a supportive family life. Now reunited, she was not just a friend but a lifeline and fellow working mother, supporting each other through the challenges of life. I grew up with a home mom who later started working part-time, seeking her own fulfillment. Venting to her provided a short break from my intense stress, yet any sense of relief was fleeting. Once I reached home, my mother and sister confronted me outside my door, visibly upset. They insisted I should be more involved in assisting with my mother's needs, claiming her joint pain was debilitating and that she struggled with her daily tasks. Despite her claims, she seemed perfectly healthy, and it was clear she was trying to make her life more convenient at my expense. Frustrated, I brushed past them and entered my house, locking the door behind me. They didn't give up easily, continuing to shout outside until, presumably, a neighbor called the police. The officers arrived and, seeing the situation, advised them to stop harassing me. However, the conflict didn't end there. Soon after, my brother-in-law, who had been staying with my sister Chloe's family, came back. He and Chloe ganged up on me, mocking my lack of a college education and alienating me as if I were an embarrassment to the family. Financial constraints prevented me from moving out, and they never missed an opportunity to ridicule me, with Chloe's husband particularly cruel in his taunts. Whenever I tried to stand up for myself, he aggressively told me to know my place. Amidst this, my mother, who is still in good health, demanded that I drive her to her part-time job and regular doctor's appointments, and I was also burdened with covering her medical bills. Even when I fell ill, I couldn't afford a doctor's visit, while she continued to receive top-notch medical care on my dime. One day, she had an accident and broke her leg, needing surgery. She insisted I should pay for it, justifying her demand by saying she took care of me when I was young. Her reasoning felt outrageous considering she rarely incurred any significant expenses on my behalf during my upbringing. Her demands left me feeling trapped and helpless. Despite her financial stability, she offered me minimal support growing up. In contrast, Chloe enjoyed many privileges like private schooling, music lessons, and tutoring. My mother rarely attended any school events I participated in, reserving her presence for Chloe, including her high school graduation. I managed to graduate with decent grades despite having to pay my own tuition and work part-time, thanks to encouragement from my high school counselor. Yet, my mother's refusal to financially support my aspirations for higher education left me unable to pursue my dreams further. Leaving my childhood home behind marked the start of a new chapter in my life, one where I could finally escape the stifling control of my mother. For the first time, I was free to make my own choices, including simple ones like buying my own clothes instead of wearing the worn-out garments passed down from my sister, Chloe. While I was forging my own path, Chloe continued to bask in our mother's unwavering favoritism. Despite the freedom, my life was not without its struggles. The betrayal by my ex seemed minor in comparison to what I had endured before, yet it stung when he failed to contribute to our children's support. Expectations were low, but the disappointment lingered. I questioned why, after all I had faced, I should now be responsible for my mother's care. One day, standing in line to settle my mother's medical bills, memories of past hurts flooded back. Overwhelmed, I turned and left the building, ignoring her desperate calls as she hobbled after me on crutches. She and Chloe, with her 2 jobs, alongside my mother's part-time income, were financially stable enough without my help. As I drove away, a rush of empowerment washed over me, though this act only ignited further resentment from them. Upon returning home, I found Chloe chastising my daughters, accusing me of abandoning our mother at the hospital. I quickly intervened, protecting my children from her anger. "This isn't their concern," I asserted, standing my ground. "Mother can manage her own expenses." The situation escalated when my mother appeared, hurling insults and declaring me an embarrassment and disowned. Amidst the chaos, Chloe taunted me, mocking my life choices. In that moment, despite their hurtful words, I felt an unexpected relief. Resolved, I told my daughters, "We're leaving tonight. You've all been incredibly strong. Pack your things quietly and load them into the car." Their eyes, filled with tears but also with a spark of resilience, met mine. We were ready to move forward, leaving behind the past and its shadows, embracing a future where we could finally find peace and perhaps, in time, happiness. I made the decision to leave once Chloe began her night shift and her husband was otherwise occupied. As they left, we hurriedly packed the car with our essentials and left quietly in the dark. The following morning, my phone was inundated with missed calls and messages from Chloe, all of which I chose to ignore. The barrage of messages revealed their desperation. Deep down, I knew they had always depended on me more than they would ever acknowledge. For months, I had been meticulously planning our departure, waiting for just the right moment to break away. Financial hurdles and a lack of available housing had held me back, but I had been saving diligently. Finally, an apartment opened up in a different district, and I seized the opportunity, securing it as our new haven. This would be a fresh start for my daughters, far from the negative influence of my relatives. We arrived at our new home tired but relieved, feeling at peace for the first time in years. A week later, I contacted Chloe. She answered with a tone of annoyance, demanding to know where I had been, and expecting explanations. I briefly explained, making it clear that I would no longer be offering any help before cutting her off, hanging up, and blocking her number to avoid further harassment. I was prepared for her possibly hiring a detective again, knowing her financial constraints. As life began to stabilize, I left my children with friends one weekend and decided to confront my family one last time. We met at a local diner. They arrived looking ready to challenge me, questioning if I had informed the police of my whereabouts. I tried to calm the situation, but Chloe's anger only intensified. My mother, however, suddenly softened, calling me sweetheart and lamenting that she hadn't meant her harsh words, asking for a financial loan under the guise of family ties. Their hypocrisy was glaring. After years of disdain, they were now reaching out only because they needed money. I had previously reported Chloe's suspicious activities at work to the police, prompting their involvement. It turned out that Chloe had been fired for embezzlement, a fact she had kept from her husband, who believed her job was their primary income source. It became clear that their efforts to find me were not out of concern, but to shift the responsibility of caring for our mother onto me, freeing themselves from any financial or caregiving burdens. They had even planned for our mother to babysit under the pretense of Chloe working overtime for medical expenses, while in reality, they expected me to handle all responsibilities. This revelation confirmed my suspicions and fortified my decision to keep our distance and start anew, free from their manipulative schemes. In a heartfelt conversation, my daughter shared how her grandmother would often return home exhausted from work late into the night. Around the same time, I learned from a concerned family member that my cousin Chloe had been secretly stealing from customers at her shop. After I discovered this, I notified the police, but requested a delay in their investigation until my children and I had settled into our new home. Once we were settled, I learned that while Chloe's children were now safe and well looked after, Chloe herself was facing the consequences of her actions. My mother, however, had chosen to ignore Chloe's misdeeds, which included selling off community-owned property for personal gain. This betrayal not only hurt the community but also pained me deeply, as my own family viewed me as the traitor for exposing Chloe. The truth came out when my niece, disillusioned by her mother's unethical behavior, confided in my daughter. Combined with several community complaints, this prompted the police to take action. When confronted, my family members could no longer deny the wrongdoing and were visibly ashamed. I knew then that they would have to face the legal repercussions and the public embarrassment that would follow. Leaving the diner where we had this confrontation, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It was as though I had closed a chapter of my life that I never wished to revisit. At home, my children played joyfully, oblivious to the family drama that had just concluded, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a genuine sense of peace. My father supported me through this ordeal, offering to handle any financial burdens from the ensuing legal battles. He wanted to ensure justice for his grandchildren and make amends for lost time, a gesture for which I was profoundly grateful. In the weeks that followed, Chloe faced legal actions, and her tarnished reputation began to affect her life significantly. Those family members who had initially criticized me started to see her true nature and distance themselves from her. My mother, once powerful and controlling, found herself isolated and burdened by debt, forced to downscale her lifestyle significantly. Meanwhile, I thrived in a new job where I felt appreciated and respected. Slowly but surely, I was building a peaceful life, day by day, in a way I had never imagined possible. Each morning, I sent my children off to school with a smile, relieved that they were safe and could chase their dreams without burden. My relationship with my father strengthened, and he became an integral part of my children's lives, enriching them with his stories and wisdom. As we moved forward, each day took us further from past pains and closer to true happiness. Despite the hardships I had faced, I emerged stronger and more resilient. Seeing the joy on my children's faces assured me that all the struggles were worthwhile. We were finally free, and I had given them the greatest gift of all. Today, as we celebrate my younger brother's wedding, his bride-to-be, Chloe, confronted me. Her words echoed loudly, clear enough for everyone to hear, slicing through me sharply. The mere thought of my brother's wedding had initially filled me with happiness, but here I was, facing humiliation in front of our relatives. The sting of her remarks burrowed deep within me, spreading a cold wave throughout my body. The once festive environment turned somber in an instant, replaced by a tense silence. I wondered if I was the only one rattled by this, or if the guests too began to view me differently. I could feel the chill of their stares, as if a silent consensus had formed that I was an outsider. Chloe's piercing gaze and sharp tone left no room for doubt. She saw me as nothing more than a burden. "You really don't belong here, Layla," her eyes accused. I wanted to defend myself, but my words faltered, choked by a mix of anger, sadness, and frustration. Each breath was strained, and my legs trembled beneath me. Despite my desire to refute her, part of me feared she might be right. Over the years, I had indeed relied heavily on Hudson, perhaps more than I realized, and maybe I had strained his relationship with Chloe. Even if I was part of the problem, Chloe's harsh delivery was unnecessary. Her words were meant to demean, to ensure I knew my supposed place. Finally, I spoke, my voice hardly recognizable to my own ears. "I understand, I managed, the words sounding as though someone else had uttered them. It had been a challenging day, both emotionally draining and quietly tense, but all I could articulate was a calm facade as I stood up. My deepest wish was to remain and witness the entire ceremony, yet I knew my presence in the room was becoming unbearable. The thought of overshadowing Hudson's joyful occasion with my own somber mood was too much to bear. With a heavy heart, I moved towards the door, feeling as though I was stepping out of my own life story. Just as my hand touched the door handle, a loud crash echoed behind me. Turning around, I saw a chair topple over. My name is Layla, and I am 27 years old. Often, I find myself pondering how different life could have been if that tragic accident had never occurred. Hudson and I were orphaned young. I was 13, and he was just 8. Our parents died returning from a weekend getaway. By the time we reached the hospital, they had already passed away, plunging my world into a silent grief that was hard to comprehend. The one vivid memory that remains is holding Hudson's trembling hand tightly in mine. After the accident, Hudson and I were placed in a children's home. The staff was caring, and we managed to bond with the other children, but a persistent emptiness lingered within me. Determined to bring joy to Hudson's life, I vowed never to let him see me cry, believing my tears would only sadden him further. Embracing my role as his protective elder sister gave me a purpose, pushing my own grief aside to focus solely on his well-being. When I turned 19, I aged out of the children's home. Although there were programs available to help us pursue higher education, I opted against them, prioritizing Hudson's future over my own. I took on day jobs and attended night classes at a vocational school, making sacrifices to ensure that Hudson could have the opportunities one believed he deserved. I pursued a degree in event planning with a quiet aspiration of one day establishing my own venture. However, this dream was tucked away in the backdrop of a more pressing priority: to support my brother Hudson. To ensure he could attend college without financial stress, I took out loans and set aside my aspirations. I believed scholarships might ease the burden, but I didn't want Hudson preoccupied with financial worries while I could handle things. Watching Hudson diligently focus on his studies inspired me further to support him in any way possible. His commitment paid off when he graduated and secured a position with a financial manager. The day I learned of his job offer, emotions overwhelmed me. Our years of sacrifice and debt had finally culminated in something worthwhile. His happiness made every challenge we faced meaningful. Upon starting his job, Hudson began contributing $10,100 monthly back to me. I was tempted to ask him to save it for his own future, but his heartfelt message stopped me. "Sis, you did everything for me. It wouldn't feel right not to give something back. Please accept this." His acknowledgement of my sacrifices brought tears to my eyes once more. Moved by his gesture, yet determined not to depend on him, I began saving his contributions, hoping to return them should he ever need support. With the skills I acquired in college, I ventured into setting up my small event planning business. Initially working solo, the business gradually expanded as I gained more clients. Hudson started lending a hand during weekends, despite his demanding job. Everything seemed to align when Hudson shared exciting personal news. He had started dating someone named Chloe, who worked at a partner firm. Seeing the joy in his life brought me immense happiness and reaffirmed my decisions. My small business not only became a testament to my independence, but also a shared space where Hudson and I continued to support each other in new ways. A year later, Hudson shared with me his plans to marry while we strolled home from a dinner outing. As he spoke, a peculiar heaviness settled over me. Although I desired Hudson's happiness, I simultaneously experienced an inexplicable pang. Was it loneliness or perhaps the fear of losing him? I congratulated him with a smile, yet internally, I wrestled with a blend of feelings. Chloe, his intended, seemed decent enough, polite and kind during our interactions, though her smiles occasionally appeared somewhat reserved. This impression intensified during a dinner with Chloe's family, held at an upscale Japanese restaurant in preparation for the wedding. Both our parents conducted themselves with poise, yet there lingered an air of subtle condescension. "It's so admirable. How far you've come from growing up in a children's home, Chloe remarked. Her words, outwardly benign, carried an undertone of judgment that was hard to ignore. Hudson, typically proud of our background, responded with polite restraint, his voice tinged with tension. After the dinner, as we talked, Hudson urged me not to worry. Despite his reassurance, the discomfort I felt was palpable, and it was clear he was affected too. Nonetheless, he was determined to make things work. More than anything, I wanted his happiness, even amidst these unsettling feelings. As the wedding preparations progressed, I made every effort to forge a connection with Chloe. We spent countless hours together, poring over guest lists and selecting dresses. While Chloe was consistently courteous, a hint of reserve lingered in her demeanor. During one of our discussions, she suddenly asked, "Is Hudson still sending you money?" Her question caught me off guard. Honestly, I think it's a bit excessive now that we're getting married. Our financial priorities should shift, she added. I was momentarily at a loss for words. I understood her perspective, but she couldn't fully appreciate that to Hudson. The money was not just a reimbursement. It represented the life we had built together. Nevertheless, Chloe had a valid point, and it was time to consider setting boundaries. That evening, I resolved to speak with Hudson. Chloe seems uncomfortable with the money situation, I mentioned, half expecting his disappointment. He appeared resigned yet firm. Maybe it's time to reconsider, I suggested gently. Hudson, you need to focus on your new family now. My heart ached as I spoke. Hudson was steadfast. I'm not ready to stop, Layla. What we've shared, what you've done for me, I can't just walk away from that. His words brought tears to my eyes, which I quickly hid. All right, Hudson. I understand, I replied, knowing that pressing the issue might only strengthen his resolve. For the moment, I decided to let him choose his path. The wedding day arrived, and I did everything in my power to promote their happiness, focusing especially on Hudson's joy. Ensuring his well-being had always been my priority, yet a part of me harbored lingering doubts. Could Chloe truly support him in the ways he needed? The ceremony was flawless, and as I watched Hudson's radiant smile, a profound sense of peace washed over me. All my sacrifices felt justified. However, the reception brought an unforeseen twist. Please stop visiting Hudson, Chloe implored unexpectedly. Her words struck me like a sudden chill, disrupting the warmth of the celebration. In that moment, it felt as though the air was sliced by a dagger, plunging straight into my heart. The room fell eerily silent, every eye fixed on me. Rooted to the spot, I was enveloped in a sea of stares, my reaction frozen by shock. A wave of paleness washed over my face as my heart plummeted. Chloe's piercing look seemed to scream that I was an outsider, that I didn't fit in. Words failed me. My throat constricted, choked by a tumultuous mix of anger, sorrow, and humiliation. Struggling to find my voice, the only thing I could muster felt alien and distant, as if someone else was speaking. I endeavored to maintain my dignity, to exit quietly without escalating the situation, but just as I reached for the door, a loud crash echoed behind me. I spun around to find Hudson standing defiant, his expression charged with fury. Chloe, do you even realize what you've just said? His tone was low, seething with indignation. Chloe appeared taken aback, unable to break away from his intense hold. You have no clue what she has sacrificed for me, Hudson continued, his voice a mix of anger and fervor. Without my sister, I wouldn't be standing here today. She gave up everything to help me chase my dreams. His declaration resonated around the room, silencing any potential interruptions. I send her money every month, not out of charity, but out of respect and gratitude for everything she's done, Hudson explained, his words filled with conviction. Chloe stood there, immobilized, a mixture of shock and fear painted across her face. As murmurs began to ripple through the gathered family and guests, the atmosphere shifted, reflecting a newfound recognition of my sacrifices. I've grown up alongside Layla, and she has always prioritized the needs of others above her own. As time passed, more and more of our friends and relatives began to acknowledge how pivotal she has been, especially to Hudson. Her contributions to our family are undeniable. During a particular gathering, the conversation shifted as guests expressed their support for her, causing Chloe's face to lose color. Then, a colleague of Hudson spoke up, revealing that Chloe often had a biting demeanor at work. This sentiment was echoed by another colleague, noting her tendency to be overly critical and demeaning. As more colleagues shared their experiences, I started to see a side of Chloe I hadn't recognized before, and with each revelation, Chloe's expression grew increasingly strained. She realized that the respect she believed she had within her professional circle was fading. Just as the atmosphere became more tense, the door swung open and a man strode in, his presence commanding immediate attention. Dressed impeccably and exuding a calm authority, he apologized for his tardiness. This was Mr. Mason, a well-known branch manager from one of Chloe's family business partners. Despite the assurances that it was merely a family misunderstanding, his keen gaze suggested he perceived more than what was spoken aloud. Upon being introduced to me, he remarked on having heard favorable reviews about my event planning business, which caught me off guard. He then learned that Layla, like him, had been raised in foster care. This shared background seemed to impress him even more. The room went silent as he spoke highly of those who overcome tough beginnings, acknowledging how Layla's resilient spirit was evident in her professional endeavors. This acknowledgement from Mr. Mason made it clear that overcoming adversity was something deeply respected at his company. We select partners based on merit, not their past. Excluding someone because of their history would contradict our principles. Hearing this filled me with pride and gratitude. Layla has been a cornerstone of our community, and Chloe's remarks were inappropriate. I agree, our family deserves better. Hudson's declaration had a sense of finality. I can't marry someone who doesn't respect my family, Chloe stated, visibly upset. She was at a loss for words. Hudson then came over and embraced me tightly. Thank you, Layla, for everything. I will always be here for you, he said. That moment was the beginning of a new chapter. Over time, my business expanded with Mr. Mason's support. I gained a reputation for my commitment and innovation in event planning. Hudson joined as my business partner, and together, we tackled new ventures. We've achieved so much, Layla, Hudson noted. And I am thankful for every step. Our relationship grew stronger, fostering a life enriched by support and new opportunities. Together, we kept advancing, building a brighter future side by side. As I readied myself for a quiet weekend alone, my husband was bustling about in preparation for what he declared was a business trip. His voice was sharp as he instructed me, I'm going on a business trip, so don't you dare call me for anything trivial. Though his departure was nothing out of the ordinary, his demeanor was harsher this time. I tried to assure him that I'd only reach out in an emergency, but that only seemed to irritate him further. It was no surprise, really. His so-called business trip was actually a secret rendezvous with his mistress. His threats grew more absurd by the moment. If you keep being a nuisance, I'll claim emotional distress and sue you, he exclaimed. His empathy had vanished, replaced by a selfish disregard for anyone but himself. He seemed oblivious to our daughter's illness and focused solely on his own desires, often neglecting the needs of our family. I remained silent, protecting myself and our children from his growing hostility. On the day he left, I stumbled upon shocking news. My husband had been involved in a severe car accident. Despite this, I remembered his stern warning and chose not to contact him, deciding that his fate was no longer my concern. With my phone turned off, I allowed myself a small smile. There was a secret he didn't know, one that might change everything. My name is Chloe. I'm a 27-year-old art teacher who crafts handmade accessories from home. Crafting has been my passion since childhood, and though I paused to raise our 3 children, I resumed my craft when my youngest started school, selling my creations online. My husband, Hudson, is 4 years my senior. We reconnected at a high school reunion and bonded over our mutual love for hands-on work. He worked in site engineer, a job he took very seriously, following in his father's footsteps. Hudson's parents, active and in their 70s, frequently visited us. Their presence often felt more intrusive than supportive. They never truly understood the nature of my work from home, dismissively commenting that it wasn't real work and lacked the importance of Hudson's career. Moreover, they showed little regard for our daughter, Ruby's serious shellfish allergy, treating it as mere fussiness and nearly endangering her life on one occasion by offering her shellfish. This challenging dynamic with his parents, coupled with Hudson's recent actions and my newfound information, left me contemplating the future and the well-being of my family as I turned off my phone to enjoy a brief respite from the turmoil. A troubling event unfolded due to a repeated misunderstanding about Ruby's severe shellfish allergy. Despite my numerous explanations, it was challenging to convey the seriousness of the issue to certain family members. They believed it was all in Ruby's mind and insisted that exposing her gradually would help her overcome it. They even suggested that no one really dies from allergies, which felt like talking to a brick wall. To ensure Ruby's safety, I never left her alone with Hudson's parents. However, they began to drop by unexpectedly when I was not at home, increasing my fears of a potential accident. Despite my pleas, Hudson wouldn't address the matter with his parents to prevent their unscheduled visits. Hudson often defended his parents, suggesting their experience with raising children should be enough to trust their judgment. Exhausted from work and overwhelmed, he left me to handle the household and the kids mostly alone. His understanding of Ruby's allergy was limited, and he often used me as an outlet for his stress. Our son, Mason, who had no allergies himself, became an invaluable support. He would read food labels and help protect Ruby. He was protective of his sister and increasingly resentful toward Hudson and his parents. One particularly trying day, after Hudson left early for work, he called asking me to clean his parents' house while his mom was out. Despite having my work to handle, Hudson dismissed it as trivial and insisted I help out. Reluctantly, I went to his parents' house. While there, I received a call from a coworker of Hudson's, informing me that Hudson's father had left some important documents at home. I collected the documents and delivered them to Hudson's office. At the office, the coworker, who I recognized from our wedding, apologized for not calling Hudson directly, not wanting to challenge his pride. He appreciated my help, but his next comment puzzled me. He mentioned Hudson had been taking time off to care for Ruby, which was news to me. On probing further, I discovered Hudson had been claiming time off work under the pretense of caring for Ruby, which was completely untrue. I was stunned and confused by his deceit. As I drove home, lost in thought, I realized the extent of the misunderstanding and misinformation within our family about Ruby's health and the lengths Hudson would go to avoid confronting the issue directly. This incident deepened my resolve to protect Ruby and made me reconsider how we communicated and handled responsibilities within our family. That evening, as darkness enveloped our home and the children drifted into sleep, I settled in front of the television to unwind. Later, Hudson returned home, his arrival marked by a habitual late hour. He was visibly annoyed as he confronted me. "You didn't clean my parents' house today." Mom called to complain, he said with a click of his tongue. I was taken aback. My day had been so chaotic with unexpected tasks at Hudson's office that I completely forgot about cleaning his parents' place. He continued, his frustration apparent. "You're always home and still, you didn't manage to clean? Did you go out instead?" I tried to explain that I had indeed visited the house, but had to rush something to his father's office, yet his expression shifted. A mix of confusion and an attempt to mask his true feelings. His sudden distance and every movement now sparked my suspicion. "Who asked you to go to the company?" he questioned, fear seeping through his facade of a day off. Opting to keep my realization to myself, I played along. "I'm not sure. I just delivered the documents and forgot about the cleaning," I said, hoping to ease the tension. "Just apologize to Mom tomorrow. I'm exhausted and going to bed," he concluded, his relief palpable, but his demeanor still guarded. His actions were a clear signal to me. Hudson was concealing something significant. After a restless night of contemplation, a grim suspicion took root. Was Hudson unfaithful? If he was exploiting our daughter Ruby's illness as a facade for his deceit, it was unforgivable. Ruby's severe allergies made her school life challenging, and despite our full support, Hudson trivialized her struggles, even claiming allergies were psychological, all the while using them as an excuse to be absent. Fueled by anger and unable to dispel my doubts, I decided to hire a private investigator. It was a difficult financial decision, given the earnings from my online business, but the uncertainty was unbearable. Weeks later, the investigator's report arrived, confirming my worst fears. Hudson was indeed having an affair. He often skipped work to spend time with his mistress, a young woman in her 20s with striking features and a confident aura. Though not entirely unexpected, the revelation left me speechless. The foundation of our marriage crumbled, and instead of sorrow, I felt only rage and revulsion. I continued to collect evidence with the investigator and consulted a lawyer to discuss divorce proceedings, focusing on alimony, child support, and custody arrangements. My thoughts now centered on a future with my children, far removed from the past I had shared with Hudson. A few days later, Hudson nonchalantly mentioned he'd be working over the weekend on a remote project, claiming it required his presence for a preliminary survey and that he'd return on Sunday. Knowing this to be another lie, as his job no longer required such travel, I was undeterred. My resolve was firm and my path forward clear. 5 months back, Hudson transitioned to a job that no longer required him to travel overnight, eliminating any work-related excuses to be away from home. Yet, I suspected he was planning a secret weekend getaway, possibly with someone else. Concerned about potential emergencies while he was away, I mentioned that Ruby was feeling unwell, Mason was still recovering from a cold, and we wouldn't have the usual support from my parents since they were on a trip. But Hudson, clearly irritated, insisted that I avoid contacting him over trivial matters during his busy work schedule, which only deepened my suspicions. His reaction seemed overly defensive, hinting he might be hiding something. After he retreated to our bedroom angrily, I decided to investigate further. Sneaking his credit card from its usual hiding spot, a place where I had previously found it, I logged into his account using the same old password he always used. There, I discovered a charge from what appeared to be a luxury inn located in a remote mountainous region, an unlikely destination for his parents who were supposed to be at a seaside hotel. Convinced he was planning to meet his mistress, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal. Determined to take control of the situation, I started browsing apartment rental sites and scheduled 5 viewings for the upcoming weekend. When the weekend finally came, Hudson left quietly with his overnight bag. I cleaned the house and prepared to go apartment hunting, telling Mason, who was lounging on the couch, to take care of Ruby. While viewing apartments, I planned to discuss the possibility of a divorce with the children later, expecting they wouldn't be too shocked given their weak bond with Hudson, who often overlooked Ruby's allergies. By Saturday evening, I had found the perfect apartment, but decided to finalize everything the following day. The next morning, after another visit to the real estate office to sign the lease and handle the paperwork, I felt a sense of relief. Despite the financial strain of paying for a private investigator, legal fees, and now a new apartment, I saw these expenses as necessary steps toward a new beginning. However, just as I was leaving the office, filled with thoughts of Hudson possibly enjoying his illicit trip, my phone rang. It was Mason, his voice panicked, informing me that Ruby had collapsed and they were on their way to the hospital in an ambulance. As the sound of sirens filled the air, my hands trembled while holding the phone. Mason passed it to a paramedic, who informed us that Ruby was suffering from anaphylactic shock. I was baffled. How had this happened? I had been meticulous about avoiding allergens in her food. Overwhelmed, I rushed to my car but found myself too shaken to even start the engine. In desperation, I dialed Hudson's number. This was a genuine emergency. He should have been available, but he didn't answer, no matter how many times I called. Frustrated yet somewhat composed by the effort, I stopped trying to reach him and drove straight to the hospital. Upon arrival, I saw Mason waiting outside the examination room. "Is Ruby okay, doctor?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Please calm down, Mrs. Brown. Ruby is stable now. Her blood pressure dropped, but she's resting peacefully," the doctor reassured me. A wave of relief washed over me, and tears filled my eyes as the gravity of the situation hit me. We had narrowly avoided a tragedy. The doctor praised Mason for his quick thinking in calling the ambulance. I swelled with pride for my son, who had acted so bravely to protect his sister. Back at home, I grabbed Ruby's insurance card and noticed Hudson still in the file. If he had planned to stay overnight at the inn, he should have taken it with him. With no time to dwell on this, I hurried back to the hospital. As Mason and I completed the admission forms, he nudged me and pointed to a news report on the hospital's lobby TV. It showed a single-car accident on a mountain road, the same road leading to the inn Hudson was supposed to be at. The footage was clear. The car, though heavily damaged at the front, had an intact rear with a license plate visible. We recognized it instantly. The report mentioned that Hudson and a female passenger were involved, but their injuries weren't life-threatening. Realizing Hudson had been unfaithful was a painful confirmation. Mason, old enough to grasp the situation, remained silent. I felt a deep sense of shame for letting the situation escalate to this point, burdening my children with adult worries. Just then, my phone rang. It was Hudson. I hesitated, remembering his past dismissiveness. "Don't call me for anything trivial." The irony stung as he now bombarded my phone, desperate for my attention. I chose to ignore his calls. Turning off one's phone in a hospital wasn't unheard of. After finishing the paperwork, Mason and I returned home, only to find Hudson's parents waiting outside. Exhausted from the day's events and not in the mood for more confrontations, I braced myself for yet another challenge. I left Mason in the car and made my way towards Chloe, who was visibly shaken. "Where have you been, Chloe?" "We've been desperately trying to contact you," I questioned, frustration edging my voice. She revealed that she had turned her phone off because Hudson had been in a serious car accident and was now undergoing surgery, expecting to be hospitalized for a couple of weeks. Surprisingly calm, I responded, "Is that so?" My apparent indifference infuriated her. "How can you remain so composed when your husband is in such a grave state? Don't you care about him at all?" Her words struck a nerve, and I felt a wave of anger rise within me. This confrontation was the final straw in what had been a deteriorating relationship, and I was ready to walk away. Earlier that day, there had been another emergency. Ruby was rushed to the hospital after a severe allergic reaction that threatened her life. I had warned everyone about her allergies repeatedly, yet here we were again. I pulled out evidence from my bag, presenting it to Hudson's parents, who were visibly caught off guard. Their shared nervous tic, a quick scratch of the head, betrayed their guilt. I confronted them about their unexpected visit earlier. They had just returned from a trip to a coastal town they often visited. Supposed to stay overnight, they forgot to book their usual hotel and found all other lodgings full, so they came back early. They brought souvenirs, rice crackers, which they gave to Mason to show to Ruby. Mason saw nothing amiss since Ruby often enjoyed these crackers, and he left. Shortly after, Ruby started reacting in the living room. At the hospital, I discovered the package contained 3 types of crackers, the usual kind and a new shrimp-flavored variant, which was not indicated on the box. I confronted Hudson's parents. "Did you intentionally give Ruby the shrimp crackers and then hide the packaging?" They dismissed the severity, claiming it was all in her head. I was livid. Knowingly giving someone an allergen could be considered assault. "This is ridiculous," they retorted, believing they had done us a favor. I couldn't forgive them for endangering Ruby's life. In the heat of the moment, they tried to shift the focus back to Hudson's accident. "Now's not the time for this. We came to tell you about Hudson's accident. Don't you even care?" they pleaded. But I was done caring. Hudson had used our daughter's illness as an excuse to take time off for a trip with his mistress. I showed them the evidence I had collected from a private investigator. They were stunned. I declared my intent to divorce Hudson and pursue legal action against him and his parents for their reckless endangerment. My patience had run out. It was time to put my foot down and protect Ruby from any more harm. As I wrapped up my statement, a police car screeched to a halt outside the office, its sirens piercing the air. Mason had alerted the authorities on our drive back. Moments later, officers were at Hudson's parents' doorstep, requesting their presence at the station for an inquiry into an alleged assault. The news startled them into resistance, but they were soon escorted away. 1 week on, a call from an unfamiliar number reached me. It was the hospital housing Hudson. Despite our estrangement, he had listed me as his emergency contact. "Mrs. Brown, I apologize for the intrusion, but Mr. Brown is insistent we reach out to you," the voice explained. Reluctantly, to spare the hospital staff further trouble, I visited Hudson. Upon seeing me, Hudson erupted. "Finally, you show up, you neglectful wife. You've been dodging my calls. What gives?" Since the accident, I had ignored Hudson's attempts to contact me. His stay in the hospital conveniently coincided with my final preparations to relocate and my consultations with a divorce attorney. Mason and Ruby had given their full support to my decision. "I didn't respond because you requested privacy, Hudson. I assumed you were busy," I replied calmly, feigning ignorance to provoke him further. "And you took my credit card. Today's my discharge day, and I can't settle my hospital bill without my insurance card. Go pay it at the front desk." "I didn't bring your insurance card. Maybe ask your parents for help." "Ridiculous. How can I? You're the reason they're incarcerated. These past weeks have been a nightmare, and I'm considering suing you for emotional distress," Hudson shouted, his voice filling even the secluded room. I'd reached my limit. "Actually, Hudson, I'll be the one filing for alimony and child support. Don't act unaware. I know precisely what you've been up to, and I have the evidence to prove it," I declared, showing him the extensive dossier I'd compiled. As he absorbed the weight of the evidence, his composure crumbled. "I've already spoken to a lawyer, and they'll be in touch soon. Mason and Ruby are aware of everything, and they back the divorce." "I can't afford to pay what you're asking," Hudson stammered, his panic evident. "You've hardly worked," using Ruby as an excuse. "Just find the funds and settle it," I stated firmly, uninterested in his excuses. At that moment, a confident young woman with long black hair entered. Hudson and I were both taken aback. "You must be Hudson's wife." "Well, now that it's all out in the open, I might as well tell you. I was the one with Hudson on that trip," she declared boldly. At the time of the accident, I remained silent. The woman, whom Hudson referred to as Layla, looked at me with an intensity that mirrored the one in the photographs I had seen. Taking a deep breath, I responded to her introduction, acknowledging that she had been hurt in the accident. I mentioned that I was lucky to have been released from the hospital quickly due to minor injuries. During our conversation, it came to light that Layla was considering divorcing Hudson, a decision that aligned with her feelings, as she confessed her love for him and expressed her desire to be with him. Layla informed me that although Hudson had not yet agreed to the divorce and was concerned about the financial burden it would entail, she was prepared to handle all related expenses, including alimony, to facilitate their separation. She reassured Hudson that by choosing her, he would not only resolve his financial issues, but would also have a partner who was younger and perhaps more aligned with his aspirations. Hudson, initially overwhelmed, realized that Layla's proposal could indeed solve his monetary problems. The promise of a new, uncomplicated life with her seemed appealing. Moved by her offer, he declared her his true partner, and they agreed to marry. As they celebrated their decision, I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of the situation, knowing well the complications that awaited Hudson. A private investigator had previously revealed to me that Layla was not just any woman. She was the granddaughter of a notorious crime family's leader. During this pivotal moment, men in black suits entered, confirming her connections to the underworld. Hudson's face paled as he realized the extent of his new reality, that escaping now could endanger his life. I wished them luck and left, smiling subtly. Within a month, thanks to my attorney, my divorce was finalized. Despite the dramatic turn of events, Layla honored her commitments, covering all expenses she had promised to pay. Hudson, now entangled in a web of debts and familial obligations, had no choice but to integrate into the crime family. He was forced to abandon his job, and the repercussions of his choices extended to his family, who faced public disgrace and isolation. In contrast, my children and I embraced a fresh start. My small handmade business thrived, and my children, especially Ruby, who recovered from her health issues, brought immense joy to my life. As we looked forward to celebrating our new beginnings with a special vacation, I remained committed to creating happiness for others through my work, teaching my children the value of empathy and resilience. My name is Megan, and I want to share how I discovered that family isn't solely defined by blood ties. Sometimes, those expected to cherish you most may end up causing profound hurt. My entrance into the world was far from celebrated. My parents, freshly graduated from college with burgeoning careers and dreams, were taken aback by my mother's pregnancy. Considering it an ill-timed event, my mother contemplated abortion, but my grandparents intervened. They had been financially supporting my parents and made it clear, keep the baby or the financial support would cease. From the beginning, I was a secondary concern. My mother eagerly returned to her career, leaving me in the hands of various caregivers and my grandmother. While I appreciate their efforts, it didn't replicate the nurturing a child expects from their parents. As years passed, my grandparents stepped back to enjoy their retirement, leaving me to fend for myself from a young age. By 6, I was self-reliant, preparing meals, doing laundry, and readying myself for school, skills that were my survival toolkit. The dynamic in our household shifted dramatically when my mother became pregnant again. This time, they were prepared and elated. The arrival of my sister seemed to herald a new era of joy for my parents, who doted on her as if she were a precious gem, while I receded further into the background. The disparity in our treatment grew starkly evident as the years passed. My sister received the best of everything: attention, toys, clothes. Mistakes she made were dismissed with a chuckle, while I faced criticism and lectures about responsibility. Despite our financial stability, my needs were often overlooked. My parents viewed me as mature and independent, unworthy of the investments they poured into my sister. Consequently, I immersed myself in academics and extracurricular activities, striving for excellence in hopes of earning their regard. Yet, my achievements were met with indifference, overshadowed by my sister's trivial accomplishments. As high school concluded, I eagerly counted down the days until I could forge my path. I applied to colleges covertly, securing a place at a prestigious institution before informing my parents. When the acceptance came, I packed and left quietly, starting anew without their knowledge. It took 2 days for them to realize I was missing, and even then it was only because my mother needed something from the store. Her nonchalant phone call asking for yogurt as if nothing was amiss marked a poignant realization. I had learned to build my own life, independent and strong, beyond the confines of familial expectations. I couldn't help but find the humor in the situation as I embarked on a pivotal new chapter in my life, and yet all my mother could focus on was yogurt. Mom, I try to keep my voice calm. I'm not at home. I've been at college for 2 days. I'm living in the dorms now. There was a brief silence on the other end as she processed my words. Then, without any sense of regret or worry, she simply responded, "Oh, well, if you come back, you'll have to stay at a hotel. We've given your room to your sister." College life was a liberating experience, although financially challenging. My parents offered no support, but thankfully my grandparents, bless their hearts, helped me out. They sent me modest sums of money regularly, just enough to keep me going. It wasn't a lot, but it meant the world to me, not just the financial aid, but the knowledge that someone in my family cared. "Megan, dear," my grandmother would say during our infrequent calls, "we're so proud of you. Focus on your studies, all right? Don't worry about anything else." Her words were a balm to my soul. With this support, I immersed myself in my studies with a renewed determination not to disappoint them. I couldn't take on a part-time job due to my heavy course load and my commitment to excel academically. I managed my finances tightly, often subsisting on ramen, and stretched every penny as far as it could go. Back home, life went on without me. My sister, the perennial favorite, faced academic struggles, but it hardly mattered to my parents. They provided her with the best tutors and lavished praise and rewards on her for minimal improvements, excusing her failures. By my senior year, job offers were rolling in. Professors praised me, and my resume was sterling. I had options, but none felt quite right. I was determined to make it on my terms, to prove to myself, and perhaps to my family, that I could succeed independently. So I took a leap of faith and applied to a prestigious international company in Europe. It was a long shot, but I had nothing to lose. When I received the acceptance email, I was ecstatic. It was my gateway to a new life. I graduated with honors. My grandparents proudly watched in the audience. My parents sent a generic congratulations card, and my sister didn't even bother. But their lack of interest didn't faze me anymore. I was past seeking their approval. As I packed my bags for Europe, I considered saying goodbye to my parents, but decided against it. They had already shown how little I meant in their lives. Instead, I hugged my grandparents tightly, promising to keep in touch often. Life in Europe was more thrilling than I had ever imagined. Occasionally, I would call my parents. Old habits are hard to break, but each conversation felt forced and disinterested. They were always too busy or too distracted to engage, and they never called me first. Then everything changed when I met Eric in the marketing department. He was all charm and wit, with a smile that brightened any room. We started as colleagues, grew into friends, and before long, we found ourselves falling in love. When Eric proposed to me on a moonlit beach, I didn't need a moment to think. It was an immediate yes. As we started planning our wedding in France, Eric suggested, we should go tell your parents in person and invite them properly. It's the right thing to do. Filled with a mix of nervousness and naive hope, we flew back to the States, invitations in hand. The moment we stepped into my childhood home, the chilly reception was palpable. My parents were distant and barely acknowledged Eric, let alone our upcoming wedding. "Oh, that's nice," my mother muttered, more interested in her phone than in our news. She quickly mentioned how busy they were with renovations for my sister's new apartment. We ended up staying for a week, which stretched out uncomfortably long due to my parents' near-constant absences, always busy with my sister's place. Throughout that week, my sister was ever-present, her behavior towards Eric increasingly inappropriate, flirty smiles, batting eyelashes. One evening, she asked Eric to help her choose a paint color for her room. The discomfort on Eric's face was clear, and I couldn't hold back. "That's enough," I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "He's my fiancé. Back off." Her reaction was theatrical, a pout forming as she accused me of being selfish and stormed off. Predictably, it wasn't long before my mother confronted me, her expression thunderous. "How dare you speak to your sister that way?" she scolded. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly at the irony. "All you've done for me?" I retorted. "That's a joke, right? You've done nothing but ignore me my entire life." But it was futile. In their eyes, I would always be the antagonist, the unwanted child who demanded too much. That night, Eric and I retreated to a hotel. My old room had been converted into a gym for my sister. Lying there, I realized I had to let go of the hope that my family would ever change. "Let's go home," I whispered to Eric, feeling his arms pull me closer. "Back to France. This place isn't my home anymore. It hasn't been for a long time." "Okay," he replied simply, "let's go home." As we boarded the plane the next day, my emotions were a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief to escape the toxicity, and sorrow for the family connection I'd never truly have. Back in France, Eric and I dove back into wedding planning, eager to create our perfect day away from the shadows of the past. One evening, as we relaxed on our balcony overlooking the Tuscan hills, Eric asked, "Are you sure about not inviting your sisters?" I savored a sip of wine, its rich flavors mirroring the depth of my decision. "I've never been more certain," I replied. "After what happened, I can't have her there. Not now." He nodded, understanding filling his gaze. What I didn't share with him were the explicit and inappropriate messages my sister had started sending him on social media since our visit. I had stumbled upon them by accident on his phone. Eric, ever kind and embarrassed, had kept it to himself. But it only cemented my resolve. This wedding and our future would be ours alone, free from the drama and the pain of my family's indifference. The 5 months leading up to the wedding passed in a blur of cake tastings, venue visits, and dress fittings. Suddenly, we were just weeks away from the big day, and there was one important task I couldn't put off any longer. Taking a deep breath, I picked up the phone and dialed the number I knew by heart, despite the years. "Oh, Megan, what is it?" "We're rather busy at the moment." My mother's voice sounded distracted, as usual. "I'm calling about the wedding. I've booked your flights and hotel. Everything's paid for." "We'd love for you and Dad to come," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause before she replied. "That's nice, dear. But what about your sister?" "We haven't received an invitation for her." I closed my eyes, steadying myself. "She's not invited, Mom. After what happened during our last visit and the messages she's been sending Eric, I don't want her there." "Messages? What messages?" My mother's tone sharpened. "The explicit ones, Mom. The ones she's been sending to my fiancé. It's inappropriate and disrespectful. I won't have that drama at my wedding." The line was silent, the kind of silence that was loud with unspoken thoughts. I knew my mother was probably searching for excuses for my sister's behavior, trying to make me the antagonist again. "I don't know what you're talking about. Your sister would never do such a thing." "Megan, be reasonable," she insisted. "I am being reasonable. For once in my life, I'm putting myself first. You and Dad are welcome to come. The flight details will be emailed to you." "I hope you'll be there," I replied, then she hung up without another word. The morning of my wedding was bright and beautiful. Everything was arranged perfectly, from the flowers to the music and the food. Yet, the 2 empty seats in the front row grew more conspicuous as the ceremony time approached. As guests began to fill the venue, a knot formed in my stomach. "Eric," I said, my voice wavering slightly, "can we delay the ceremony a bit? I need to make a call." His eyes filled with understanding and sympathy. "Of course, Samore. Take all the time you need." With shaking hands, I dialed my mother's number again. It rang several times, and just as I was about to give up, there was a click. "Hello," my mother's groggy, irritated voice came through. "Mom, where are you?" "The wedding's about to start," I said, my voice a mix of hope and dread. There was a pause then. "Megan, do you have any idea what time it is here?" "We were sleeping. It's the middle of the night." I felt a slap of disbelief. "Sleeping? But the wedding, you were supposed to be here. I sent you the ticket, the hotel information, everything." "Oh, that." Her voice turned cold. "Well, we decided not to come. Your sister is having her housewarming party today. We couldn't miss that." I was stunned. Her housewarming? But she's known about my wedding date for months. Why would she schedule it for today? "Don't be selfish, Megan. The world doesn't revolve around you. Besides, how could you expect us to go to one daughter's celebration and not the others? If you had invited your sister like you should have." "Mom," I interrupted, my voice firm, "you know why I didn't invite her. After what she did, that's all in your head, Megan. Your sister would never do such a thing. You've always been jealous of her, always trying to make her look bad." I laughed, a bitter, incredulous sound. "Jealous? Is that what you think this is about?" "God, Mom. Do you even hear yourself? Don't take that tone with me, young lady. This is your fault. Your sister's party is none of my business." Hanging up, I turned back to Eric, tears brimming but my decision firm. "Let's start our ceremony, Eric. Today is about us, our love, and the future we will build together. Not about the past I'm leaving behind." I ended the call sharply, just as my wedding was clearly none of their concern. "Goodbye, Mom. Enjoy the party," I said, and hung up before she could reply. My hands trembled, but my resolve was unwavering. I glanced at my reflection, took a deep breath, and made a pivotal decision. So, I walked down the aisle alone. No father at my side to give me away, no mother in the crowd shedding tears. But seeing Eric at the altar, his eyes full of love, I realized I had everything I needed right there. Time to help heal, or at least dull, the sharp edges of old wounds. Eric and I built a fulfilling life together, marked by love, laughter, and career successes. We traveled, forged new friendships, and crafted a cozy home. My parents remained distant. No congratulations on our marriage, no holiday greetings. Eventually, I stopped looking for their names on my phone during holidays or on my birthday. Disconnecting was simpler. Then, one seemingly ordinary Tuesday in April, my phone rang, displaying an unfamiliar number from my hometown. My heart pounded as I answered. "Megan? Is that you?" My mother's voice, sounding older and wearier, came through. "We need your help," she continued. The family business they had dedicated their lives to had collapsed. They were jobless and savings were non-existent. "We've always lived well, you know that. We know we haven't been good parents, but we need help, please." A storm of emotions raged within me. Anger, satisfaction at their predicament, pity, and a tiny, hopeful spark that this might be the moment they'd finally appreciate me. "Okay," I sighed. "How much do you need?" The amount was staggering, but Eric and I had been fortunate in our finances. I transferred the money, a tumult of feelings churning inside me. "It's done," I told her. "The money should be in your account soon." Over the next few months, a pattern emerged. Requests for money came frequently, each ask smaller than the last but incessant. And each time I complied. After one such transaction, Eric caught me with a resigned smile. "They asked for money again," he inquired softly. I nodded. And again I sent it. God, when did I become such a pushover? "You're not a pushover, amore. You're kind. It's not your fault they can't see what an amazing daughter they have," Eric reassured, his arm around my shoulders. It was a lazy Sunday afternoon when my perspective shifted dramatically. Idly scrolling through Facebook with a coffee in hand, I froze at a photo. There were my parents, looking relaxed and carefree, cocktails in hand, lounging by a pool at an upscale resort. I clicked through more photos. There they were again, dining at a Michelin-starred restaurant, posing in front of a luxury spa, clearly enjoying a lavish lifestyle. With a sinking feeling, I switched to my sister's page. My heart sank as I saw images of her with a new sports car at high-end bars, surrounded by designer shopping bags. The stark contrast between their pleas for help and their extravagant expenditures chilled me to the bone. As reality set in, I realized how manipulated I had been, financing a lifestyle for them that they had deceitfully presented as a desperate need. This revelation was a painful but necessary jolt, prompting me to reassess my generosity and the boundaries I needed to enforce with my family. The captions on my sister's posts gushed about them amazing gifts from the best parents in the world and how lucky she was to be the only child so blessed. My parents had added comments like, "Nothing but the best for our little princess," and "You deserve it all, sweetheart." My hands trembled as I read, feeling nauseous. The phone slipped and clattered to the floor. Just then, as if on cue, my phone began to ring.
It was them.
I took a deep breath and answered. "Megan, dear." My mother's voice was unnervingly sweet. "We were wondering when you might be sending the next transfer. Life's been so hard, you know. We're thinking of renovating the house. It's gotten so old and dreary." Something inside me snapped. "I've seen the photos, Mom. The resort, the restaurants, the gifts for my sister. How dare you?" I confronted her, voice shaking. There was a pause. Then, chillingly cold, her voice changed. "Now you listen here. We gave you life. I could have had an abortion, you know, but we chose to have you. You owe us everything. Now, about that money," I didn't let her finish. I hung up, my entire body shaking with rage and hurt. The phone started ringing again and again. Text messages flooded in, toggling between guilt-tripping and demands. I turned the phone off. Over the next few weeks, my parents continued to call and message demanding money, then pleading, then threatening. I ignored it all. I blocked their numbers, unfriended them on social media, and cut off every avenue they had to reach me. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, of guilt, but whenever I wavered, I remembered those photos, those comments, the cruel words my mother had spat at me. Years passed and life evolved. Eric and I had built a successful life in Europe, but something was calling us back to the States. Maybe it was nostalgia, or maybe it was the desire to start our own family in familiar surroundings. Whatever the reason, we decided to return to my hometown. We settled into a new life in a quaint house in a quiet neighborhood, secured prestigious jobs, and started planning for the family we hoped to have soon. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. One afternoon, while having coffee with an old school friend, I learned about the dramatic turn of events in my estranged family's life. "Did you hear about your sister's party?" my friend asked, her eyes wide with gossip. I shook my head, bracing myself for whatever was next. "It was wild," she continued. "After everyone left, she fell asleep while smoking in bed. The whole house went up in flames. Your sister made it out, but the house, it's completely destroyed, Megan." I sat there stunned. The house I grew up in, the site of so many conflicting memories, was reduced to ashes because of my sister's carelessness. "That's not even the worst part," my friend added. "Turns out your parents let the insurance lapse. They've lost everything." A part of me felt a twinge of satisfaction, which was quickly followed by guilt for feeling that way. But as I sipped my coffee and listened, I realized that this was just another chapter in the ongoing saga of my family's recklessness. A chapter 1 had closed long ago. But mostly, I felt nothing. My parents had made their choices, just as I had made mine. Life moved forward. Eric and I poured our energies into our careers, our home, and planning our future. Then, one sunny Saturday morning, a knock on the door upended the calm. I opened it to find my parents standing there, their appearances drastically altered. The designer outfits and coiffed hair were replaced by shabby clothes and graying, unkempt hair. "Megan," my mother began, her voice shaking, "we need your help." Frozen. I listened as they described their plight. Living in a cramped, rented apartment, struggling to make ends meet with no savings and no support from their parents. They were unable to find work due to their age. Then my father added bitterly, "Your sister kicked us out of the apartment we bought for her and said she didn't have room for old people." I almost wanted to laugh at the irony, the golden child rejecting them as they had once rejected me. But the laugh died in my throat when I saw their desperate faces. "Please, Megan," my mother pleaded, "you're our only hope." For a fleeting moment, the little girl inside me, who had always longed for their love and approval, wanted to let them in. But then my mother's tone shifted to demanding. "After all, I could have aborted you. You owe us your life." That was the moment the spell broke. A calm settled over me, a certainty like never before. "No," I said firmly, my voice clear. "I don't owe you anything. Not for giving birth to me. Not for the years of neglect. Not for choosing my sister over me time and time again. You made your choices. Now you have to live with them. I'm asking you to leave. If you don't, I'll call the police." My father tried to step forward, but I stood my ground. "I mean it. Leave now and don't come back." They left eventually, hurling insults and threats as they went. I closed the door, leaning against it as tears came. Not tears of sadness or regret, but of relief, of closure. That night, I called my grandparents. They had always been my steadfast supporters, even from afar. They listened as I recounted everything, offering words of comfort and support. "You did the right thing, Megan," my grandmother assured me. "You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm, especially those who wouldn't even notice if you burned." As I hung up, a profound peace washed over me. The last ties to my toxic past had been severed. The future stretched out before me, bright and filled with possibilities.